All right, welcome into back to the podcast. We are going to talk a little college football playoff. We're going to talk a little bowl season, and we are going to talk a little college football Final Four here with Mr. Rene Ingoglia. He is an ESPN analyst. He was a two-time All-American running back at University of Massachusetts back in the day, back when I was even playing. He is even a 2024 College Football Hall of Fame ballot consideration, meaning he could be going to the College Football Hall of Fame next year, and he's a 2007 University of Massachusetts Hall of Famer. Welcome into your debut appearance on the podcast, Mr. Rene.
Thanks for having me, Jace. It's my pleasure.
All right, take me back to your days at UMass a little bit, playing running back. How fun. I mean, just talk about the glory, not the glory, but just the enjoyment you had playing. You had such a successful career, two-time All-American at UMass. You were a 1999 World Bowl champion in professional football. Talk about that experience playing overseas.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, going back to UMass, I mean, obviously, I think we can all agree college football is much different today than it was in the early 90s when I played. You can say for the better, for the worse. It's just different, right? I think we can all agree on that. Listen, and I was pretty heavily recruited coming out of high school in Rochester, New York. I tore my ACL my senior year. So you do that in the late 80s, early 90s, you're just done. So University of Massachusetts, smaller Division I school, was the only school in the country that gave me a full scholarship. So obviously I went there, got to start for 4 years, became an All-American, had a really nice career there. I mean, I owe everything I've done in football and accomplished in football to that place. It's great. I mean, I'm a huge supporter of them now. They're going through a rough patch. For those that don't know, they're not in a conference. They play independent.
Right.
It's there's only one school that can live in the independent world, and that's Notre Dame. And even Notre Dame, as soon as that NBC money stops, they're going to get into a conference. So I talked to the athletic director, Ryan Bamford, this week. I know he's working really hard for the athletic program there to get them into a conference. So hopefully they will. But yeah, my playing days was great. I like all of us, I miss the relationships. The one good thing about social media, as crappy as it is when we, just hear the crappy things people say, it keeps you in touch with people.
Yes.
And so that part of it's great. But it was good. I like to tell people I had a cup and a half of coffee in the NFL. I was with the Redskins for a season on practice squad. Then I was with the Bills for a couple seasons, made the 53-man roster, and then finished it off, as you said, in 1999, played in the NFL Europe, won the World Bowl with the Frankfurt Galaxy. Jake Delhomme was our quarterback. So that's a great memory. The last time I ever touched a football, we won a championship, and I got to score a touchdown in that game. So I always have that fond memory.
And you got to play when kind of the growth of football in Europe was just taking off, about playing overseas and the culture. Just talk about that experience of playing in front of people who really didn't know the game very well, and just kind of teaching them the game as you went along.
Germany loves American football. They do. They back when I don't know if they changed it now, but they didn't call it tailgating. They called it power partying because they can drink over there. So they love American football, and you saw that the NFL finally went there this year. They'll definitely go back to Germany because it doesn't matter where in Germany you are. They really like American football. And let's face it, the NFL, football in general, is the number one sport here in America. They have to try to grow it, in Europe, and I think they will. And it would not surprise me in the next 4, 5, 6 years, something like that. There's probably going to be NFL franchises in Europe. They'll make it happen. There's no doubt about it. And that's where the growth is right now.
Speaking of partying, are all the rumors true about how Amherst is party central?
Zoomass, yes, it was. And so when I went there, I want to say undergrad was about 20,000, graduate students was about 8,000. I think they're up, undergrads, they're up over 30, and with graduate students, well over 40,000, approaching that 50,000 mark. So yeah, it's definitely a party school. I just wish. So the University of Massachusetts, we're in Western Mass, right? Amherst, Mass. So it's it's the flagship university for the state, but it kind of just gets pushed out there in the West because Boston is Boston.
Right.
And I'm not afraid to say this. They do not give the support that they need to the flagship university, which is the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. When I went there, Jason, I always looked at it that I said, man, this could be a University of Michigan. this could be a Penn State. They have all the room in the world.
For the East Coast, yep.
Yes, they have all the room in the world to build a beautiful stadium. That stadium, Warren McGurk Alumni Stadium, was built in the 60s. They haven't done a thing to it. Now they've upgraded to press box, and they put a end zone football facility there, locker room, weight room, which is beautiful. The stadium in and of itself, they haven't done a thing. They have to put money into that university, and so hopefully the powers to be in Boston do. But to be frank, they just don't care enough about the University of Massachusetts and Amherst, which they need to. Yeah, they need to.
And you were there, and weren't you there during the kind of the heyday of Calipari?
I was Calipari. Right there. Yep. Still talk to Marcus Camby today. Great basketball program.
Yeah.
The problem, and it's an actual great question. The problem that I think a lot of hardcore University of Massachusetts athletic fans, the older fans do, they think about those glory basketball days, which is great. Those days are gone. We live in a world where basketball is a big deal. Football's driving the bus. Basketball's on the bus, but football drives it. Just the way it is. I didn't make it that way. You look at TV money and what's going on. You have to get behind your football program, and then all the other sports will benefit from that. And there's been people reluctant to do that. You know, everyone talks about the Atlantic 10. The Atlantic 10 was a great basketball conference. It was. It's not what it used to be, you know. So I think the athletic department needs to look elsewhere and just kind of look at the floor plan out there of what's going on in college athletics, and I think they're doing it.
All right, let's get to some football now. Let's get to the playoff. Sure. The playoff rankings, obviously, here in the state of Florida, big impact. Obviously, you got Michigan 1, Washington 2, Texas 3, Alabama 4. Obviously, outside of the four, and we're going to get to the Florida State discussion here in a second.
Sure.
The top 4. Did you have any qualms with who was rated where in the top 4?
I didn't. And I think the committee kind of boxed themselves in. And I know we'll get into it. It's amazing that it took 10 years to happen what happened this year. And it's ironic that it happened the last year because we should be in 12 this year. Jason, we should be arguing about seedings this year, not who's in and who's out, but we'll get into that. I'm kind of going back. 4's right, and we can get into that after. But the committee tied themselves, Texas and Alabama together the way they did, and head-to-head mattered. So if one went in, the other one was going in, and they had to seed it correctly. But I think it's right. I think they got it right at 1 through 4.
All right. And yeah, that's what I've told people for the last several days is you're right. The tie with rarely have we had a situation where 2 of the top 4 played each other, one beat them, and then you had obviously and they both won their conference. So you had the dilemma of do you take them both, do you take neither, and all that stuff. And head to me, you're right. Head to head matters. You have to. That's the result that has to matter if you're gonna evaluate these teams as a head to head situation. Yep. All right, let's get to Florida State. Your thoughts. First of all, my first question is, does an undefeated season, should that guarantee you a spot?
No, and I mean, and it's in there, you know, if you look at kind of the bylaws of the college football play. Now, we can argue it,
right?
But in their rule system, undefeated has nothing to do with it, right? I mean, if it did, Liberty would be yelling, and there's been other schools, you know, so. And as I said before, this system was designed to leave a Power 5 program out, right? There's only 4 spots. There's 5 power conferences this year anyway. It's amazing that this hasn't happened before.
Right.
That to me. Listen, I feel horrible for Florida State and their players. I know Mike Norvell. I've covered him a ton when he was at Memphis. I have a really good relationship with him. I think he did a great job this year coaching. If you go back, I opened my season week 1 at Miami, and we went through, you know, the preseason selections for the ACC. And I said on that show, and I got tape of it, I believe this is a year Florida State wins the ACC and makes it into the college football playoff. They clearly would have made it.
Yes.
Based on the committee's rules. Once Jordan Travis got hurt, they were done. And I knew that back then. I said, they're in trouble. They're in trouble because I knew that caveat was in there. And I knew, and I'm paraphrasing, if you lose a player that could adversely affect what the team looked like and what the team will look like in the playoff, they take that in just as much consideration as head-to-head as conference champion. And when that happened, I said, they're in trouble. And ultimately, that's what happened.
And this was a rare year too, because most years it had worked itself out. Somebody would lose when they weren't supposed to lose.
Yep.
This was a year where you had legitimately 6 really good teams for 4 spots and 5 really good conference champions for 4 spots.
Yeah, and I'm almost to the – I mean, I think what really pissed Florida State fans off is once Jordan Travis got hurt in that North Alabama game, and oh, by the way, and again, I'm a huge Florida State fan, and no one's talked about this. They were down 13-0 in North Alabama, who's not even a good FCS school,
right?
Forcing Florida State to kind of put the gas pedal on, and that's ultimately where he got hurt. I'm not saying that's why he got hurt, but you're down 13-0 in that game. Should have never been there, right?
Right.
I don't think they went into that game with the right mindset. And I watched that entire game, and even though they end up scoring 50-something points and blowing them out, Florida State did not look good in that game.
But went through the motions. Did
not look good in it. So, but I think when Travis got hurt by the committee leaving them, and then ultimately the next week, I think put them back into 4. That's what really hurt, bothered people. And I agree with that. You look back at what Ohio State did, because there was a precedent there with the injuries, right? Yep. They put a new quarterback in.
Cardale Jones.
He goes off. They win 59-0. If Rodemaker has a really good performance against Florida,
yes, they get the benefit of the doubt. They get the benefit of the doubt.
I don't think we're having this conversation now. Where my qualm is with the committee is if they kind of knew and they're reading the tea leaves what could happen if Alabama beats Georgia. After that Florida game, they probably should have dropped Florida State back 1 or 2 spots, keep them in reach, but they didn't. They kept them in the 4 spot. And I think that's what's hard for people to fathom. So, I am almost like, we haven't even talked about Georgia. Right. They dropped Georgia to 6. I mean, if Georgia beats Alabama, they could have still knocked Florida State out and put Texas in. I think Alabama would have been the team out. So I guess we'll never know that. Again, should have never came down to this. We should have been in the 12-team playoff this year. And then we could have been outraged about seedings, which is much different than getting left out. With that said, I think if you're a Florida State fan, Jason, you still have to understand, hey, you're going to New Year's 6. Yeah. You're going to the Orange Bowl. You're going to a huge game, and you're playing Georgia. That's actually your gift from not making in, which is nuts. And then, but who plays in these games, right? Who opts out, who doesn't? But you still have a chance to really go there. And, you go there to the Orange Bowl and you knock off Georgia, then that makes the committee look bad, right? So that's what you have a chance to do right now.
2 points on Florida State. I want to make that again. A lot of people don't realize. Like you talked about, had Rodemaker played well at Florida, they would have. And the reason they stayed at 4, I think, is because we didn't know till Friday before the Louisville game that Rodemaker wasn't going to play. They were going to give Rodemaker another chance to play well against Louisville. Had he played well against Louisville, I think they would have found a way to keep Florida State in. I mean, and say what you want, you can't go for 130 yards at Gainesville with your backup quarterback. It's hard to do against not a very good Florida team. That's just the bottom line, and they were not good.
No, I agree. And, the other thing, I lost my train of thought, but looking at the college football playoff and their criteria, and I've said this forever because I'm on TV, and there was a lot of confusion this year, and I don't know with a lot of the pundits, deserving versus best. Right. Deserving is not a word that the committee considers. I mean, there's 7 or 8 teams deserving. You just deserving is on it. It's the 4 best. Now we can argue who the 4 best is, but guess who gets to say who the 4 best are? The 13 committee members. I mean, that's the way the system was set up by the college presidents and the commissioners. And they went through it. And, I know it's hard. And I live in Florida. I'm right here in Orlando.
Yeah, me.
And I know you are too. And I know, and a lot of Florida State fans that I'm friends with texted me. And I said, listen, I know it's hard, but without Jordan Travis, the committee got it right. They put the 4 best teams in, right? They just did. And you can argue, well, Georgia's still one of the top 4. And I believe they are. But by losing head-to-head in the conference championship, they lose that data point of conference champion. Yep. And so you have to put Alabama in there. And then we already talked about Alabama and Texas being tied together. We saw what Texas did in their championship game. And so that's what the committee did. And ultimately, I think the committee got it right. It sucks for Florida State. I get it. You do everything you're asked to do. 13-0, you win your conference championship. But when it comes down to the top 4 teams, you lost your starting quarterback, who was phenomenal, who was arguably in the Heisman Trophy race as well. And you put your backup in, and that's what you get. The committee saw that, and it's unfortunate.
No, I'm with you. I give the committee credit, because the easy thing to do would put Florida State at 4. I mean, we've always complained, well, precedent. That doesn't mean the precedent was good the last 9 years.
I didn't think they were going to do it either. But I think they got it right with what they were working with under their system.
Yep,
they got it right.
And here's the other scenario that's never happened, but easily could have happened one year. What if all 5 power conference teams went undefeated? Well, somebody would get left out.
Again, that system was set up to fail like that. Amazing that it took to this last year. I just cannot wait till we get to 12, because I just think it's going to be fantastic. It's going to bring more teams into the equation. It's going to bring
the little guy. It's going to give the Liberty of the world, Boise's of the world, a chance.
Yes, so I cannot wait for that next year.
All right, so give me a quick synopsis. What do you think in the semifinals? What do you think in the matchups? Alabama, Michigan, and then Texas and Washington.
Yeah, I just think how about this Rose Bowl matchup, right? Michigan, Alabama. Did you see when they had the camera on Michigan when they found out Alabama was in and not Florida State? Just kind of like, oh boy, because that's a team that's. Listen, I was down on them early. I thought Milroe was playing not good. I just didn't think it was. I didn't think they were close to an Alabama team that we've seen in the past. This is arguably Nick Saban's best coaching performance ever. What he's done with this team, and I think they're peaking at the right time. I think Milroe I give the kid so much credit because of what he went through and then how he just kept building and getting better and better and better. With that said, I like Alabama in that game.
I do too.
And then, Texas and Washington. Listen, it's a shame we haven't even talked about it. Arguably the best year the Pac-12's had in a long time, and now the conference is going kaput. Thank you, TV money and football driving the bus. We already talked about that.
Right.
With that said, Texas is for real. I think Texas's defensive line, offensive line. I'm an old school guy, Jason. You already talked about how old I am playing back what I did. I don't care how fancy your offense is, up-tempo, snap, USF in Tampa, snap the ball every 7 seconds, go quick. I don't care what kind of offense you run. The game is won and lost at the line of scrimmage on both sides. It just is. To this day, it still is. And that's where I give Texas the advantage over Washington. So I think we're destined to see a rematch, Alabama, Texas in the championship.
I'm with you. I think I'm with you because that's the one part of what Texas' program has elevated under Sarkisian are the defensive lines and offensive line of scrimmage, the toughness and the physicality they didn't have with other coaches.
I agree. And so, and how ironic is it also? I mean, so really we quasi this year, we have 2 SEC teams and 2 Big Ten teams in this thing, because obviously they're going into the conferences next year.
And the last point, we'll move on to a little more state of Florida flavor. The ACC commissioner was the guy against going to 12 teams this year. Yeah, could have had 12 this year.
Yeah, and so listen, I get it. They were upset, but it was kind of like, we're upset that Texas and Oklahoma's going, and so this is what we're going to do. But it ultimately didn't better anyone. And so now we look at it, his team doesn't get in. The Pac-12 doesn't even have a conference anymore. You know what I mean? So it's kind of nuts. And then, the Big Ten was sitting there in good shape, and I don't know what the hell they were thinking. But, it's kind of crazy how things end up.
All right, let's go to the state of Florida a little bit, a couple of Florida points. Give me your thoughts. You're right there in Orlando. Give me a thought or two about UCF's first year in the Big 12, just the transition and, how Gus handled that and the program transitioning.
A lot of people ask me, I said, if they can go 6-6, 7-5, get to a bowl game in that first year, that's a success. Okay. Fans in college football, all fans, just not UCF fans, they can get a little delusional, right? Oh, we're going to come right in. We're going to win the conference first year. Listen, it's great to hope that and think it, but you also have to be realistic. I mean, just in college football in general, someone said this the other day, and I could not agree more. When teams have 10-win seasons, we kind of like scoff at it. Oh, they didn't win the championship. Like you look at an LSU, they win their bowl game. They're going to win 10 games. They're going to be 10-3. That is a phenomenal season. We don't give teams enough credit for getting 10 wins, or like a UCF transitioning into a Power 5 conference, getting to a bowl game. Now, listen, the Baylor game just derailed their season. They were up, I think, 35-7 in that game at home. You can't lose that game. They ultimately let that tidal wave into a couple more losses, but they fought back really hard at the end of the season, got to bowl eligibility. Good for them. And listen, they're going to be playing in Tampa, the George O'Leary Bowl. They're playing Georgia Tech. They get a good opponent. They can really finish their season off with a strong win. So if you're a UCF fan, ultimately, yes, it could have been better by a couple games, but you got to a bowl game. You're going to build on next year. I think you're in a really good position. So if I'm a UCF fan, I'm happy. Is
Gus Malzahn the guy for that job, you think, long term?
Yeah, he's not going anywhere. I've had conversations with him. He likes to say he's on the back nine. He's on about the 16th hole.
Yep.
So however long it takes him to play 16, 17, 18, I think he ends his career at UCF. I don't think there's any question about that.
Let's go to USF. Year one, Alex Golesh. What a job turning that around, getting bowl eligible. They lost a game or so they maybe shouldn't have lost, but again, they play Alabama really tough. We talked about the struggles. I was in the building that day, played them really well for 3.5 quarters. What are your thoughts, Alex Golesh, year one?
Alex Golesh is not getting enough credit nationally on what a great job he did coaching. Yep. You know this, Jason. Look at the program. The 3 years before he got there, was it 3 wins total, right?
4, I think 4, but
4. Okay,
4 but maybe total. 2 Division I wins, 2 FCS wins.
Correct. He comes in, gets him the bowl eligibility. I mean, to me, that's Coach of the Year stuff. Now, I have a good relationship with the American Athletic Conference. I was in New Orleans for the championship game this week, and I was talking to some people, and they said, "Oh yeah," I brought this up, and they said, "Oh, we know the USF fans are hammering us on social media," and they know what a great job Alex Golesh did. So if you're a USF fan, you are thrilled because you really didn't know what you were getting with Alex Golesh. I mean, before they hired Golesh, there was rumors about Deion Sanders, and there's no doubt, from what I hear, Deion was interested in the job, but Deion's salary and his laundry list of wishes, a lot of schools just can't do it. Right. Another one that I thought was going to come to USF, and I think they were interested in it and would have been a great hire, was Jamie Chadwell. Okay. But you go to Liberty, Liberty's paying him $4.5 million. Right. USF can't do that right now. So you get Alex Golesh thinking based on this year, slam dunk, home run. Now if you're USF, you got to put your money where your mouth is. You got to coach. They got you to a bowl game. He said, I saw him on social media, they're going to break ground this summer on their football performance center. They already have a beautiful indoor facility. I saw it this year when I went up there and did a game. And you got to break ground on that stadium. First, that on-campus stadium has to get done. When they do that, they're going to be a force to be reckoned with because it's going to up their attendance. It's really easy for the fans, the students just to walk over. They showed me where they're putting it. They're putting it in a beautiful spot. So now it's, full foot forward supporting that program, but I could not say enough of great things about what Alex Golesh did this year. Now, we'll see. They get a great opponent, too. They get to go down to the Boca Bowl. They get to play Syracuse, who's transitioning, new coach. So they can really cap this season off with a winning record, go 7-6, and that'll really catapult them into next year.
I'm surprised that the Gasparilla Bowl didn't pit USF and UCF. That would have been I understand why they didn't do it because they want people traveling into town a little bit. I get that. But that would, from a state perspective, that'd have been a hell of to rekindle that rivalry.
A lot of people wanted to see it. Remember when UCF played Florida last year?
Yes.
They sold it out. They sold that stadium out. So that would have been a good one to see for sure. But I like the 2 matchups nonetheless for both those programs.
Give me a thought on Miami. Obviously, Miami with the disastrous no kneel down situation, that really turned there. Not that they were going to be a national title contender, but at that moment, they were undefeated and had some momentum. What are your thoughts? Van Dyke's leaving as the quarterback, kind of another so-so year for Mario coaching-wise. What do you think's going on in Miami?
I agree with you 100%. So I did their opener against Miami, Ohio, where they looked decent. But I also said on that broadcast, when you look up, this Miami, Ohio team is going to have 8, 9, 10 wins. Oh, by the way, they ended up with 11. I think they ended up 11-2, won the MAC. I knew they were a good team. Miami was vastly improved this year. I know the record was only improved by a couple wins, but the lack of the kneel down just crushed them. That cost them, to me, 2 wins. So would they end up 7-5? Right. I think they probably should have been a 9-3 team, and they probably would have ended up there.
Yep.
Mario is on he's on a 3-year plan. Okay. He has said that. So, Van Dyke ended up going through what he went through. So listen, the transfer portal for the quarterback position is unreal. I've never seen anything like it. Never seen anything like it in my life.
Have your checkbook ready. Have your checkbook ready.
So, my wife asked me the other day. I said, "Oh, Dylan Gabriel's leaving Oklahoma." She's like, "He is? What's he got? 1 year left?" Yeah. I said, "Someone's going to buy him for a year. Someone's probably going to give him $2 million to go play for a year." Yeah. NIL ended up getting tied to the transfer portal, which that was an unintended consequence. So they need to fix that. NIL and transfer portal in and of itself is okay. I think they need to tweak the portal a little bit too. I had some ideas about that, but we'll see what they do. But with that said, Miami going in the right direction. I don't think anyone can argue that. And the other thing too, Mario's doing a hell of a job, and you knew he would do this recruiting, right?
Yeah.
He's keeping kids home in South Florida that they were losing. That's a big deal. He shored up his offense and defensive lines, which we talked about. So they're going in the right direction. There's no doubt about it. Just the fact that they didn't take that kneel down and lost to Georgia Tech the way they did kind of
inexcusable. It's inexcusable.
It is.
Yep. It's inexcusable. All right, give me a thought on Billy Napier. Kind of another tough finish, lose 5 in a row. I think the losing 5 in a row is the hard part at the end there. They were more competitive. They played competitive in a few games that they lost. I give them credit. Yeah. But next year, I think he's definitely on the blazing hot seat.
So I think the best thing for Billy Napier, and I covered Billy Napier a ton in the Sun Belt when he was at Louisiana. I think the best thing for Billy Napier is what Mike Norvell's doing down the street at Tallahassee. Because remember, Norvell was getting, who's this guy? Who's this guy? And the best thing that Florida State did was they had patience.
Right.
They let it work itself out. They let him coach. And then now look where he's gotten them. So I think if you're a Florida fan, you're looking, let's be a little more patient, because these teams, these programs don't have the patience. So I think if they give him the patience, ultimately he can do it. But we just talked about it with the transfer portal, with everything that's going on. You can lose some key pieces quick, but you can also gain some key pieces quick. So I think if they're patient with him, he'll get them there. Listen, he runs a different style program, different style offense than I think Florida is used to.
Right.
He runs the football in a little different way. Ultimately, though, Jason, if you win, I think the fans will buy into it. But you got to win. You just talked about it. All those losses at the end really hurt. So, but we'll see. I think that next year, though, is big. It's a big year for him.
All right, we'll get you out of here. Talk. Give us a little forecast into the future. I know you got a couple bowl games coming up. Give us a little of your schedule here the next month.
Yeah, so I will know after this week, either Friday night, December 15th or Saturday, Friday night, December 15th or Saturday, December 16th, when bowl season kicks off. I'll start off with an FCS semifinal, which I'm looking forward to. So the 1 seed is South Dakota State. They won last year. 2 seeds, Montana. I think they're going to hold form. So I'll either be up there in Montana or South Dakota State. So I'm looking forward to that bowl. That next week, I'll have a post-Christmas bowl. I got the Military Bowl. Good matchup. Tulane and Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech out of the ACC. Brent Key did a nice job. And then, of course, with Tulane, does Michael Pratt stay? Does he opt out?
Right,
and that plays a lot into that bowl game. I got a feeling, knowing that young man, he's going to play in that bowl game. But we'll see. And then I'll fly back home, Orlando, the Pop-Tart Bowl, which is a really good matchup. North Carolina State, Kansas State. Of course, Kansas State's quarterback's already in the transfer portal. So, again, nuts.
Their OC just went to Texas A&M this morning.
Yeah.
Colin Klein.
You got to keep track. It's just so hard. But I'll be doing that game for ESPN National Radio, so that's always a fun one. So that I'll end my season with that one, just like I did last year. I ended it last year. It was called the Cheez-It Bowl, but it was the same bowl. It was Oklahoma Florida State, if you remember. Florida
Yeah.
State got that win and propelled themselves into this undefeated season. So we'll see which of these 9-3 teams, Kansas State and North Carolina State, can do the same. Dave Doran's had a really nice year at North Carolina State, by the way. I don't think he's gotten enough credit as well.
All right, last thought, I'll get you out of there. I know you cover the AAC and Tulane. Tell the audience and the country what a great coach Willie Fritz is. Going to Houston now. This guy's done an unbelievable job turning around that Tulane program.
Phenomenal job. And, he would have been at Georgia Tech this year if Brent Key in the interim role didn't win a couple there at the end.
Right.
There's no doubt about it. So the thing about Willie Fritz is, and he's a little older, and I say older, he's like 62, but sometimes that gets held against these guys. So I thought, oh man, are they going to not give this guy a Power 5 job because he deserves it? Great thing for him is he's got ties to Houston. He's got ties to Texas. He coaches Sam Houston, and he said it in his press conference. You look at him, every team, every level he's been at, he's won.
Develops players. 2- and 3-star guys.
He wanted a chance to do it at the Power 5 level. He gets a job. I think it's a great hire by Houston. He'll get that program going in the right direction. A great guy, great coach.
Well, Rene Ingoglia, man, awesome analysis. 2024 College Football Hall of Fame ballot. That's an make or miss. That's an unbelievable accomplishment for you. By the way, me and you are about the same age. Do you remember a guy back in your day played in an FCS school, Arnold Mickens from Butler?
Absolutely, I do. And matter of fact, I know Arnold. I know the name well because Butler had transitioned from Division III to FCS, and Mickens rushed for like 2,000 yards. And so I always saw his name in the rushing list.
And the reason I mentioned that, when I was playing at UAB, the coldest I've ever been in my life, we played at Butler in December against Mickens in a snowstorm on campus at Butler. Never been colder in my life, standing on the sidelines at Butler.
Oh, by the way, I had UAB this year too. Trent Dilfer, another slam dunk hire for them. I think he might probably move some assistants around, tweak some things, bring some different coaches in. But good program in a great conference, great facilities. He's going to do good stuff there.
I got you. All right, Rene Ingoglia, have a great holiday. Have a great bowl season on the Call. ESPN Analyst, you'll see him all over the platforms. Have a great holiday. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Jason.